please.
Will do.
Yeah, 'cause
Oh, it's nice to see so many people bidding.
It was really refreshing. I've never been in that process before, and it was kind of neat to be in that. It was like Christmas.
This should make it highly competitive.
I hope so. So I'll fill you guys in when we know.
Okay, thank you much.
Commissioner Pinker, there was a couple other updates here.
Yeah.
On the fire alarm panel for the Marshfield Fire Department, basically that was opened on Tuesday, and we had two contractors that bid on that. It looks like Permar is going to be the successful bid on that. It was about $10,000 cheaper, and it came in at about $41,000. So
Yeah.
everything looked really good for that. I'm looking forward to having them on board and getting that taken care of for the department.
Yeah, their reviews are actually quite strong.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they're definitely a big name in the business. And the big one here was making sure that we had a non-proprietary panel, meaning that anyone can fix it. So we can basically call it any electrician. And then Brian had one quick update on the 9/11 event that'll be coming up. We've been doing a lot of planning with the police department, fire department, and two different agencies, which would be American Legion, and who's the other one? FW, there we go.
So yeah, we're planning on 9/11. We've been working, Travis has been in the committee with me, along with some union members and then other staff members from the American Legion to VFW and all that. So we're planning on doing a 25th anniversary of the 9/11. We'll have displays out front, apparatus and stuff like that. Hopefully do everything on that apron out here. So we got a lot of stuff just tapped going on, a lot of stuff going on with the planning and all that yet. There will be light lunch afterwards and all that, and a tour inside the station of the 9/11 beam and stuff like that, so people can actually be more part of the 25th anniversary. So that's all in the works and coming up very shortly. So.
Definitely more information to follow as we get closer to that event, but that'll probably be prior to our next meeting, so we'll get information out to the commission.
Because police department's got some other commitments later this morning. They've got to leave a bit earlier. We're going to change some of the agenda items. You have before you the police department bills. Are there any questions? Motion to approve. Second. Motion to approve. A second. Roll call, please.
Richmond?
yes.
Schutz?
Yes.
Mink?
Yes.
Pinker?
Yes. Police department activities, training reports, and correspondence packet. Anything worthy?
Thank you. We've got a pretty busy month again. I really didn't see anything that needed extra explanation, but I'm happy to answer any questions prior to their approval.
Anybody have any questions? Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of receiving and placing on file? Aye. The ayes have it. We have a resignation before us. Do we have a motion to accept the resignation?
I'll move to accept the resignation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Richmond?
Yes.
Schutz?
Yes.
Mink?
Yes.
Pinker?
Yes. And we have a request to move forward with the hiring process to fill that vacancy created by the resignation. We have a motion. We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Roll call, please.
Richmond?
Yes.
Schutz?
Yes.
Mink?
Yes.
Pinker?
Yes. Gentlemen, Axon is all yours.
I think that might be a new record, Commissioner Pinker.
Should be this one.
Just in case it breaks.
Alrighty, thank you for the opportunity to talk about Axon today. We felt that it would probably be important to share in more detail our potential renewal of the Axon contract. As you know, that's a huge item in our operating line. So we want to be as transparent as possible about that. There's a ton of information to share today, so I'll probably read off my slides a little more than I otherwise normally would, but I don't want to miss anything. Stop me at any time for questions, obviously. So the Axon contract renewal is a really big decision. We absolutely want to be prudent with taxpayer money when considering this renewal. We also don't want this to sound like an Axon commercial. We're not here to sell Axon or anything like that, but we do feel like we're qualified to speak to our experience with Axon because we've had it for a number of years now, and we've been completely satisfied with their customer service, their product quality, and the reliability of their products. So, in addition to that, it's hard to find competitors with Axon because Axon is the only maker of Taser, and so that gets us into their ecosystem in and of itself. So, kind of what we want to walk through today then is just our decision about the contract renewal itself. The reason it's before you obviously is because we're in the budget process right now. We have multiple Axon contracts that are expiring actually next month. So we thought this might be an opportunity to take a look at all those contracts, potentially align them all together, and then have one expiration date for all of those contracts moving forward. In addition, Axon always used to only offer 5-year contracts, but now they offer 10-year contracts. We thought it would be worthwhile to at least explore that as an option. And then later, we'd also like to just kind of talk through whether or not adding drones through the Axon platform is something that might be palatable or not. So we'll talk more about the drones later. But essentially, we want to kind of just look at the contract renewal here first and whether or not a 5-year or a 10-year plan seems to make the most sense. Oh, I should back up. Just so, in case you're not aware, Axon actually, so when I talked about the multiple contracts before, we have a number of things through Axon. We have our body worn cameras, we have our fleet cameras, we have redaction software we just added about 2 years ago. Obviously the tasers, and then they house all of our digital evidence storage. And that includes any digital evidence that's not created through our Axon products, but also third-party evidence that we bring in.
So part of what helps us with that is with it being all basically made by one vendor, all the different parts work really well together. So like our redaction software, for instance, works really well with our body camera videos. So we can, it's not glitchy and it saves us time.
So here are the numbers. We recognize that Axon is a very expensive product, and when we looked at the renewal, they didn't let us down in that, and we're looking at some pretty large costs just to renew the current products and services that we are actually using through them right now. So this chart on the screen and in front of you is in regards to that. I also, so there's a memo in the packet, excuse me, that outlines this too, and we're looking at for a 5-year renewal. I call it status quo, but just keeping the same products and services. We're looking at an increase of over $46,000 annually to keep those products and services going, 37.5%, so huge jump there. And then the 10-year, even more, $56,000 annually for the next 10 years for a 45% increase. So that's a lot. There's obviously pros and cons to the 5-year and the 10-year. We don't personally fear the 10-year in terms of whether or not Axon will exist or continue to make quality products and have a quality service in 10 years from now, because they seem to be a company that only continues to grow. You know, the only fear that crosses our mind is maybe somebody comes along and says that Axon is a monopoly or something like that, but outside of that, we don't have concerns about their existence in the future. So,
has the 10-year contract been reviewed by the city attorney yet, or is it just?
Not by the attorney yet. Finance has been looking at it. Okay. Both finance folks, Jordan and Jennifer, have been taking a look at those and asking some really good questions about them that we've been talking back and forth with our Axon rep about to try to clarify and make sure everything's correct in there.
With the new procurement policy, though, that is a step that has to happen before the contract's actually signed by the city. So that will happen if we choose to go that direction.
If we were to approve the 10-year renewal, let's just say, right, and if the city, the city gives us a set number of dollars, would you be able to and they said they didn't like the drone program for whatever reason, would you be able to shift that money from another
Well, we wouldn't move forward with it until the budget is approved, so we would know. So if, we've got a really good working relationship with our vendor. If we chose the 10 and the city cut our money, I'm sure we could pivot to 5.
Okay.
Okay, so we wouldn't sign any contracts until after everything is ready to go.
Yeah, but the 5's really not cheaper than the 10 if you look at doing an analysis.
What I worry about, what I worry about is maybe it's kicking the can down the road, but the increases go up so quickly, the 10 at least locks us into a price that we can predict for the next decade.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I
see
said,
it the
pros and
same way
cons.
as you do in other departments. See it the same way as you do.
Right.
Any questions about just the contracts, what's all in them, or the difference between the 5-year and the 10-year? That's really all it entails, so. Okay, if there are none, then I'm gonna move us into this drone discussion just as another potential option. This, to be very clear, would be in addition to the numbers that I just gave you, and in your memo in the packet there, it kind of lays that out in a table as well. But wanted to talk just about the drone program that they offer, and then at least consider it while we look at our contract renewal. So the department does have an existing drone program. It's just most of our equipment is aged and out of date. I'll kind of walk through that here a little bit later. The drone program, because of all the outdated equipment and stuff, we feel is something that we've kind of been looking at for the last year or two. We need to make some updates. Instead of looking at something like this where we added into the Axon platform, we were considering budgeting for a larger drone for sure through the CIP program, but as you know, that is borrowed money and accrues interest, and so we thought it would be at least worthwhile to do our due diligence and look into what it would look like to have it as part of this plan. So a little bit of history on our drones. Our current outdoor drone, I call it outdoor drone, outdoor or larger drone. Usually those come with thermal capability. You would think of those as, you know, looking for lost people or search and rescue type things. Our current outdoor drone was actually donated to us over 6 years ago by the Altman family. It is manufactured in China. It currently is very limited. The thermal isn't really working on it. The controller screen is damaged. The batteries have all expired. But since 2020, we have logged 174 flights, totaling 23 hours of flight time and 122 miles. So that's really all we have for that outdoor drone. It doesn't get used. It doesn't go over 6 miles per hour. It's not in good working condition right now. So current indoor drones, I'm gonna pivot from this in a moment. Just we'll cover the stuff on the slide, but then we got a lot of good questions from Commissioner Gershman yesterday about some of these drones, so I'll pivot to that here shortly. But just overall, also manufactured in China. We have 2 of them. One kind of works. It tips over to the left all the time, and it's not a prop issue, so it might be a motor issue. And then the other one that does actually work well, I've labeled as Mini 2 on there, and we've had that one. That one's our newest one. We had it since January of this year, and it's logged approximately 30 flights. So Commissioner Gershman had a lot of good questions here, so I'm just gonna I forwarded those on to one of our pilots yesterday to get kind of the details about where the state of our drone program is at. So we actually have, in totality over the years, accrued up to 7 drones. 5 were purchased and 3 of them were donated, or I'm sorry, 4 were purchased and 3 of them were donated, I believe. The large one that I referenced earlier is a DJI Enterprise thermal drone. It's one of the original drones that we had. The thermal, we talked about thermal camera not working. It's on its 2nd set of batteries. It will probably not be made much longer. The smart controller screen is cracked. It was dropped during a search for a missing person. We currently can't go over 6 miles per hour. We have 2 DJI Minis. They're also part of the original drone program. These drones were great, but the batteries failed and they stopped making them, so the drones had to be replaced. We have a DJI Mini 4 Pro, purchased to replace the other minis. It was, again, used in smaller areas to clear interior and buildings. This drone has about 40 minutes of battery life. Utilizes a prop guard, but still regularly bumps into things and crashes due to being flown inside buildings. We currently are having problems with that one. Like I mentioned before, that's the one that's flipping over on the left-hand side for unknown reasons, we think it might need a motor repair. We're not sure what the cost of that will be. The DJI Avata is the Mini 2 that I referenced before. That's in great working order. And then we had 2 donated drones a number of years ago that were never used. They were larger. They didn't have thermals on them. They couldn't really offer anything different than what we had working at the time, so they weren't used much. We believe the batteries are all discontinued for those as well. So as far as how many of them are operational then, we think like maybe 2.5. Not sure, none of those are large, all small drones. And then why are the non-operational ones not repaired, if any of those exist? The 2 minis are not in service due to the batteries. Their software is probably no longer supported. They've been replaced by newer and better models. The batteries for the donated ones are most likely discontinued and the drones are obsolete. And the Mini 4 problems are currently trying to be fixed by our PD pilots, but may have to be taken in for repair.
Really comes down to trying to keep up with the technology changes. So.
Well, you know, the biggest thing is just the takeaway from this is you don't even have a working outdoor drone. Right. So with no infrared, you're not going to find people. So, yeah. And you're really, the ones that have been donated are really just more for the hobbyists. They're not meant for professional use. Right. Especially from a tactical standpoint, they're useless.
At the time that they were donated, they're all standing. Yeah. And the technology has advanced so much.
Right. Yeah. So I think these are all great.
So I kind of covered the state of the drones a little bit. Some other questions that were asked is how many operators does the city have? I don't know of any other drone operators in the city. They might have that as a personal hobby.
I'm just thinking inside the department.
Okay, yeah. And inside the department, we have 3 officers with their 107 license.
Yeah.
We would like to add 1 or 2 more. Questions were asked about how often they practice. There's really not a structure for that right now. They practice when they have the availability to do so, and when opportunities come up in the community for things that we get asked to help with, they obviously will go and do that, even if it's not completely law enforcement related. So we would like to get that to be more of a structured quarterly thing at a minimum, where they practice and have a set time to do so, similar to our SWAT team and our K9s and all of that. So questions about the certification, whether they need to be renewed. The initial cost of the Part 107 pilot certification is $175. License needs to be renewed every 2 years. The renewal is free. So that's kind of where that sits. Are those most of your questions?
Yeah, I think you did really well. So, you know, it's just, you know, I appreciate you answering all these questions. I've spent a good amount of time just exploring this whole issue with drones, and I was, you know, initially I was reluctant, but looking at examination in terms of the multifactorial, we'll be able to use this. And listen, I realize it's expense. I mean, I'm as cheap as anybody. But I think there's tremendous value in having this drone program. And also, I think, you know, the department wants to update some policies and such and training. So I think you're going to be able to initiate that. We really don't, you know, for the most part, we don't have a working drone program now, really. But I can just see.
It's we do have a working drone program, but it's mostly for indoor, and that does pay a lot of dividends because we can put that drone in a place where a person could get hurt. You know, so it saves us from sending that person into some dangerous situation.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But you don't have the best drone, you don't have infrared, so you're not going to be able to use it.
We're limited.
Yeah, and especially Commissioner Pinker and myself had talked about this, just if we have a lost person. Also, I could see where the fire department, this could be a really big deal.
Right.
So in what I'd like to do, Commissioner, is if I could, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 10-year contract.
If I could interrupt just for a second, you know, there's people watching and council, and we'd really like to get the information that we got out if we could.
Yeah, for sure.
What we'll do is you finish your presentation, then we'll start with Andy.
Yeah.
Over to Steve, let you make any additional comments. I'll make some comments at the end, then we'll look at doing a motion.
Thank you, I appreciate the time.
I'll try to move quick.
Yeah.
All right, so one of the things we heard since the last meeting from a number of you is that you want us to look at American-made drones specifically, and you heard me mention in the previous slides that all of our other drones, our current drones, are not American-made drones. To be clear, the Skydio that Axon offers is an American-made drone. I tried to look at a comparable competitor so we could do our due diligence there. The only one that I found was a company called Brink out of Seattle. When I looked at what we wanted in a drone program, I was looking for somebody that could offer both the large outdoor drone and the smaller indoor drones, as well as a platform or software backing to actually run those drones on, and then obviously bring in that evidence and be able to store it and all those types of things with secure storage. I wanted to clarify one thing because in the memo, you'll see that it talks about a patrol-led DFR drone. DFR stands for Drone as First Responder. I don't want anybody here to be confused about whether or not we're pursuing drones as first responders in their traditional sense, which I think most people would consider that to be a rooftop, somewhat autonomously dispatched drone that will leave a hatch on a rooftop and then go to a call for service. It's usually integrated with your computer-aided dispatch system. That's not what we're currently looking at as part of this. It is an option down the road. Skydio is compatible with that. Axon makes it, Brink makes it. But we're not looking at doing that at this point in time. So just to be clear on that. So I did talk to one of Brink's representatives on the phone. I have no doubt that they make quality drones. And you'll see on the next slide here, though, that they, well, not the next slide, a couple slides later, they offer pretty much the same package. It's just quite a bit more expensive. It doesn't integrate with the Axon system. So
Brink is specific more to law enforcement than maybe Skydio is, which makes it almost like if you look at a regular computer versus the tough books that we have in our vehicles, it's a lot more rugged. So that adds to the cost. So Skydio just isn't as tough as Brink.
So I did put the cost of a 5-year contract. That's what Brink offers, a 5-year contract. I believe I sent you an email correcting my initial amount on there. When I talked to the rep on the phone, he told me that it was going to be just under $48,000 a year for their program, to be identical with what we were looking at with Skydio and Axon. He then sent me a follow-up email like the next day or two and said this was the actual cost, $43,998 a year. So for what that's worth, it went down $4,000 from what I had originally put in there. So. Commissioner Gershman already brought this up, but we see value in the drone program not only to us, but other city entities, obviously, and we've already used them to help out other city entities. I was just talking with Justin Casherson yesterday from Parks and Rec. They actually believe that some of our drone footage that they asked us to compile of sort of a before and after at some of their parks has actually helped them receive some grants that they otherwise thought they might not. So when we have opportunities during storms, natural disasters, I'm sure with you guys with fire situations, we certainly are willing to go help out other departments and try to make sure that we provide that service to them as well.
I can expand on that for just a second. If we had a thermal layering on that, just for the train derailments by themselves, that could tell us. If you go and look at the Ohio-Palestine incident, that was a big one with the polymerization. You talk about polymerization, it's when two chemicals mix and you have to basically stop that mixture from happening. And basically what they had to do is explode that particular one. But that tells us as we fly over, we're not putting people at risk right away. We're actually able to assess that from the air and find out where the problems are and then make a better calculation on how to take care of that incident. So that's just one of them. I know on the other one for search and rescue, in a tornado type incident, if we can get a good visual over the top of that and start to get good footage of what's happening, we can better find out how we can respond to that. On top of that, taking those pictures and sending those off to FEMA so that we can get that funding coming to the community as soon as possible. So those are the big ones that I saw that would be definitely helpful in those two major incidents. They don't happen a lot, and hopefully they never happen during this time, but at the same time, if they do, this would be an instrumental piece just to help us with that. So it would really help us in that area.
So you don't have a drone currently at all?
We do not. We've always utilized the police departments, and one that we really use for like search and rescue, and that's part of our Project Lifesaver. We have utilized it in multiple different, but at least 2 or 3 rescues we've had it, and we've been successful with that. They've operated it, but at the same time, we've been able to find victims a lot faster. Obviously, if we get them into care, and a lot of times they're outside, either in the heat or in the cold, and if we can find them very quickly, that's gonna save a life. So
just as a side note, kind of piggybacking on Everett's comments, that with this refresh, we get a new drone every couple of years, but we retain the old one. So this could start, you know, a drone program with the fire department too, or it gives us some other assets that we can capitalize on.
Yeah, that's a big deal to be able to update the technology.
It helps keep up the technology.
And we've also talked about a couple times just offline, talking about possibly getting some drone operators over here. If there was people that were interested in doing that, we could possibly send them. If there's a police incident, we could take over the drone portion. If there's a fire incident, they could take over the drone portion, and definitely help each other or help both departments out.
We're usually at the same scene anyway, so it would work out nice.
So trying to utilize it the best we can.
I can see some advantages with that if you want to, would explore that.
Just to mention a few law enforcement examples, we've had quite a few, obviously mentioned already in locating missing people, but we've found suicidal people on the railroad bridge. We were just about to put in the air for a suicidal subject on the railroad 2 days ago. The county ended up locating him just before we put our mini drone in the air to try to locate that person. We've tried to be proactive and do some protective sweeps of rooftops and such prior to like Hub City days. We're bringing thousands of people into an area on Central Avenue there, and we want to just make sure that that's safe prior to. We've become aware of children playing in a fenced-in backyard prior to our SWAT team going to initiate a search warrant on a residence, so we were able to pull back from that and not, follow through with that at the time when there was little kids in the yard. We've cleared numerous residences on firearms-related calls prior to sending our officers in those locations, so they've paid off in many ways just for us, but again, we want to share it with the rest of the city as well. And probably more recently, you saw it hurting a group of cattle on the southwest side of town. So
Yeah,
we use it for that as well. So. I also heard last time some concerns about privacy, transparency, and accountability a little bit. So I just wanted to cover a little bit about that. So part of when you think about paying for a drone program, we're not just paying for the hardware, the large and the small drones. What we're paying for here is also a software platform that can track these flights. We can look back and see who was the pilot on those flights, what might be the statutory reason for the flight, and we can also then display that on a public dashboard, a public-facing dashboard, showing the telemetry of that flight and giving some reason behind it, and being just completely transparent with the public as to what we're doing with the drone. So that's a huge part of it. Just to be clear too, if we dispatch that drone, or if we have the pilot send it to a location, it's not recording the entire way that it's going. The drone is using the horizon, sort of looking straight forward, and it's going to go to the location that we want it to go, and then it'll start recording once it gets there. So every time we take off with this, it's not as if it's recording all the data along the way. So there's some safeguards in place there. Also through Axon specifically, and I believe Brink offers this, is there's audit trails, so we can see, again, who used it, why, but you can also see who viewed that video, obviously who we released it to, if we shared it with anybody, all those types of things. And so I think that's a decent amount of the cost involved here as well. We're not just talking about the drones themselves. So we're not looking to use them for general surveillance, and they don't record on their way to a scene.
And we're also able to redact any video that we do release to the public easily because of the redaction software we have through Axon.
Mentioned before that this is a huge decision. One of the things that we've been trying to do when we think about spending money and these increases in some of these contracts is try to see if it aligns with our strategic plan. I highlighted a couple areas in here where I think that it does, and one of those is to expand and implement emerging technologies. We want to explore opportunities to improve our efficiency, our service, our responsiveness, all of those types of things. And then also cultivate relationships with regional law enforcement. So sometimes local agencies don't have the same tools, and we can share with each other and that type of thing. So
also community partners.
Yeah, and community partners too. And then we also believe it's values compliant. We try to look through that lens as well. And so I just listed a couple ways. I hit on a lot of these with the software that's provided, but we believe it does create a level of efficiency in solving some situations quicker than normal in some situations, and then also, again, being able to do those protective sweeps as proactive engagement. The integrity and accountability comes through those platforms that you're paying for, whereas like now we just have the drones and we don't really have anything, a system backing it, and being able to be transparent about all those flights. And in that way, we also think it's community focused. So just kind of wanted to bring those things up because we are trying to make a really large decision here that involves a lot of money, and we want to make sure it's the right one for the right reasons. So in looking at Brink and looking at Skydio, we've been believing that Skydio is probably the better option. It would be one thing if Brink was less money, but it's actually up to $25,000 more, so that's not helpful, especially when it doesn't integrate with our current Axon evidence and device ecosystem. Again, not a commercial for Axon, but we have zero complaints with their quality, their products, their customer service, all of that. We would like to consolidate all those contracts into one, so there's a benefit there. And we have a lot of confidence in Axon's security with their data, what they do with it, how it's controlled, and the transparency of all of that operation. So that would be our suggestion if we were allowed to go in that route. So this is it, and this is the last slide, finally, right? So what we're looking at making decisions on today, we really want your input. We appreciate the questions ahead of time and look for advice on where to go from here. Just to add in that box with the number 3 on it there, somebody referenced it earlier. If we're approved to move ahead with this drone program, these are some things that we would plan on doing. We're going to take a look at updating our policy. We'll talk about when we can use it and when we can't. Certainly provide that transparency dashboard. They include all of the training, the FAA certification. We already have some certified pilots, but we might add a few. We'll work on retention categories that are already set for our body cameras and Axon, but this would also be a place where evidence would be getting inputted and we'd have to set retention categories on that evidence. And then all the audit logs that come along just traditionally in the Axon platform would apply here as well. So, questions?
Andy, start with you.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a beneficial having a drone program. What I like about it is the accountability on the audit trail and the efficiency between the entire platform. And that can, save in the long run of the efficiency part. But I guess over the last 6 years, like 29 flights per year broken down, does that justify the 26,000 increase for the 5 years, or?
I think that's a fair question.
How much have we spent on our current program? Is it?
Our current program, like Commissioner Gershman says, is limited.
Yeah.
So we would like to build a better platform. But even though those flights may not have been very frequent, when they are, they're high cost, right? So it's one of those things that's typical in protective services, both fire and police. We have to prepare for the worst case scenario because of life's at stake. So,
and then would this be something that could be, a percentage split from the fire department if they're going to benefit from it as well?
We thought about that too, but really, I think what we're doing is we're coming from the same pot, right? And so I don't know that it saves the city a lot of money and it becomes more confusing. We do split some other costs. Something that comes to mind is radio and things like that. It is a possibility to do that. I guess I would leave that up to you guys if you see an advantage to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Steve?
Can you compare Brink versus Axon with the drone updates as far as the
Refresh
devices?
Yeah.
And the comparison of the prices overall? What are we paying for initially versus what we get over the term of the 5 or 10 year contracts? And how would that benefit us? So that's only one part of my questions.
Well, that was like a 3 or 4.
I know, I'm sorry.
You're looking back at
all
FPO.
Okay. So Brink only told me they offer a 5-year contract, so I tried to compare 5 years to 5 years as best as we could here with the numbers. They are very, very similar in terms of what we're getting as part of that 5-year contract. So both companies are offering a larger outdoor drone with thermal capabilities and a smaller indoor drone package. Both of them have a software package that tracks flights and all that types of things that I talked about before for accountability and being able to, I didn't mention earlier, but both of them can feed that data live and live stream it to a command center if needed.
Right.
So the really only difference is the marking of time in which they refresh. So both of them refresh. Brink does it at year 2 and year 4. Skydio does it at 2.5, every 2.5 increments instead, so 2.5 and So outside of that, I believe that, I'm not a drone operator, so the text and the specs, I'm not completely familiar on it. They looked almost the same, except there were areas where Brink did have a little bit of an advantage. They had a longer flight time. They're a little bit bigger drones, and they have more payload capability in many cases, which we weren't specifically in need of at this point in time. But again, the problem became, even if all things were the same, or even if Brink had a little bit of the specs that were better on the hardware itself, we're still looking at, what did I say, more than $25,000 per year. And I'm kind of comparing that, maybe that's not the right way to say it, because I think I was comparing that to the additional $18,000 it would cost through the Axon 10-year renewal contract, from the 5-year to the 5-year. So
What is also,
price difference.
the software is compatible, but they're on different platforms too, so there's gonna be some frustrations there.
Yeah, I did ask about that. I said, well, if we ran Brink drones, could we download that evidence to Axon's platform? And he said yes, but then I talked to a user after that, and they said, yeah, it's possible, but it's quite clunky. And then we worry about chain of custody a little bit with that evidence as we're downloading, uploading, and downloading and uploading again from different platforms. So it seemed not great. Other questions that I missed in there?
No, part of it with the download from Brink to Axon, Axon would have the proprietary rights, I think, to either allow it or disallow it at any time during a 5 or 10 year period of time. That's a concern that I think I have.
But we do have third-party uploading too, so we probably could go under that.
But to get it to mesh together
Right.
appropriately. And then obviously Brink would probably be storing all of our evidence if we went with Brink on a separate cloud, and then we'd have another cloud to compare. Being Axon, we'd be paying basically for 2 cloud services for the same type of device, only different brands, so it's a duplication of service as well. And then the drone over let's say whether it's a fire, a train derailment, somebody hiding or going down the railroad tracks, suicidal or missing, doesn't matter. It's a bird's eye view overhead. I'm wondering, once that's, those videos that are taken, is that something that can be zoomed in on? Is the technology there? That's part of it. Live and or after.
Yes.
Then the other thing is that I don't think we're getting into, that I can remember in the previous conversation or this one, is I think that it's a tool just like the body cam. It's an impartial witness of events. Does it portray everything that's going on? What's in the mindset of the person that the police or the fire department are dealing with? Or a 360 view? It doesn't. But it is that impartial witness. And so that also falls back to potential liability issues down the road. So for me, the drones, the body cams, all of that is a huge tool, and it helps the city as a whole. Nobody wants to get sued. Nobody wants to lose a suit, obviously. So this is that impartial witness that we also need, that's being added almost as if it's a set of employees.
Good point.
Randy?
I think 3 things. I think Axon, as far as industry-wide, is the strongest financially and the most innovative company in this space. And the fact that everything integrates within the cloud, the data, and you're able to either attach the data, delete it, also limit who actually sees the data. Plus, I think there's a lot of leverage with the drone program with other city departments, not just the fire department, but I think you're gonna be able to use it more when you have a useful device, right?
Right.
So I look at it too as, yes, it's an expense, but I think there's tremendous value in what you're trying to do. And if you look just at the mathematics of it, the 10-year contract is less expensive. because Axon has a history of increases. So you're gonna build into that 10-year contract, you're gonna get better equipment, you're gonna get better support, but the more sustainable increase over the years. So I think there's a lot of value because the technology can change dramatically, it can become more expensive, but we're gonna be locked in to be able to do it. I just have no worries that Axon can fill this contract and we can use the product, so that's my last.
Thank you. When I take a look at this, with Axon, we have that 10-year price control. We have access control. We have the replacement of the units. And we still have units which we can share with other departments or perhaps sell on the market. We're getting an American product. I think it was made very clear at the last meeting. That's what we want. The body cams, squad cams, and tasers, they're all Axon. They're all getting updated via the contract. And if we went with another vendor, the tasers go out, and that is a significant liability action. We get the updated tasers, we get the training. If they leave the system, that becomes a separate expense for us, or we eliminate them, and then that changes our whole force use continuum, which is, once you leave the taser out, you don't have an intermediate point. You start to up the game all along. We've got the data interfacing. We only have one system, so there are no moving parts. When I looked at negatives, I only came up with 3. One, somebody's gonna say, oh, look at the expense, this is too much money. You're tied to a single vendor. But right now, we got the best vendor out there. Right. We have the price control. When we take a look at uses, just very quickly, I came down with 12. If I added some relative to the other city departments, I got a list of about 16 or 17. One that we briefly mentioned at the last meeting, which I think is very significant as the city approaches its boundary limits, is we have an extensive wildland-urban interface. And some of that is not easily accessible. We do have the one vehicle that we can bring in, but we can't get larger equipment in there. We can't get our EMS units in conveniently in some of our park areas. This gives us an advantage. As I've mentioned before in some of the updates, there are departments out there in difficult to access places which have used the telescoping cameras for patient assessment, at least external patient assessment. So I think this is all very good. I think it all leans toward a 10-year package. There are other systems out there. It's a case of comparison and contrast. Comparison or similarities, there aren't any. It's all contrast, which are differences. Is there any other discussion? Gentlemen, do you want to add anything?
No, I feel like I really feel like this would be a good program as well. Right? I like the direction of basically the FPC here. I feel like this is something we can work together to bring a better and stronger program together. And I think overall it would be good for both departments as well as the city of Marshfield, especially in those major incidents.
I have one question. So when one breaks, they send you a new one. Is there a limit? I mean, hopefully that doesn't get to that point, but let's say you break 10 in a year.
Yeah.
Say, okay, we're gonna start charging you now?
No, that's a good question. So first off, I think our perception is that if any of them are gonna get broke, the likelihood it'll be the smaller drone. So they kind of they give you a backup one of those like right away, assuming that's gonna get broke. But if it's the larger drone, I read somewhere in some of the paperwork that was provided, I believe they will only replace the thermal on the larger drone once every year or two or something like that. That was the only limitation that I saw. Apparently that's probably one of the most expensive pieces. So,
right.
So there is a limit on that.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly the time frame.
But they would still be insured? Right, so.
How about the history of their technical support versus other companies that the PD's had? I know some of the answers, but I think it'd be nice for other people to know.
Axon has been phenomenal. The vendor, we have a one person that we contact that does basically everything for us, Trevor. And he's been awesome for us. We've enjoyed that because all we have to do is make one call, and if it's redaction, if it's taser, if it's whatever, he gets us connected. We had, I remember years ago, we were having some issues with our squad cameras. They sent a team from down south up to do it. I mean, they stayed in a hotel and they saw snow for the first time. It was real fun. You know, it's that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I have no complaints at all about their service.
They're very responsive, so we have a number we can call for, like, they pick up the phone every single time. You can be sitting in your squad, if it's a fleet camera, whatever, they'll walk you through it. And I really think like almost every single time that's been fixed, like that day, if it isn't, they will send you a return label. We send in a body camera, whatever, it's back in a couple days, but that's happened once or twice in the last almost 10 years that we've had them.
And I mean, that system with Axon has improved over the years. Years ago when we had to send tasers in, that process got kind of clunky for a while, but they have streamlined it so much over the years. It's awesome.
Okay, so at this point, our consensus is to stay away from the 5-year program, correct?
Yes.
The consensus is to move to the 10-year program as described. Okay. I look for a motion for the 10-year program.
Seconded.
Motion, we have a second. Roll call, please.
Gershman,
Yes.
Schutz,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes.
Anchor.
Yes. That item is approved. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last item here, direction, how to handle police department's interaction with municipal policies. At the last meeting, there was sort of this informal fingers at Steve to be the representative. Steve, do you have any problem handling
I don't.
their policies like I did with the fire department?
I don't have a problem with it. I would just have to probably either go in there or know when
Okay.
they're posted.
Steve has volunteered to handle the lexical review.
Can I just ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Do you have a login for the fire department's electrical policy, do you know?
No, I don't think I do.
So we did for the fire department, did hard copy.
Okay.
And,
I just,
you know, that way we had it there, we could, if we had to, we could
Sure.
cut and paste physically.
Yep. I just know you can only have one login, we can't have a login for both departments, so,
Okay.
I'll come in and touch base with you.
thank you, appreciate it.
Gentlemen, we're done. Safe trip.
Thank you.
Does anybody want to take a brief recess before we do fire department? 5-minute recess. have the fire department bills. Are there any questions about those bills?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Gershman?
Yes.
Schutz?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes. Fire department activities, training, and correspondence.
Right. We had a couple items this month that I really wanted to kind of point out. One was traffic management and management training. That was something that we put all 3 shifts through. We do that probably every about 4 to 5 years. Basically just go through the rules of the road and making sure everybody's on that level to understand what they can be accountable for, what they're not accountable for, making sure everybody's accountable for those actions. Also, during that time, we also did the EBOT course down at Nelson Jameson. I want to just give a shout out to Nelson Jameson for allowing us to go down and drive on their parking lot. The reason we drive there is because they have a very large concrete base underneath that, and they've allowed us to utilize that the last few years to try to do that. So really appreciate that. That helps us to do what we need to do. And then another one is going to be our compassion fatigue training. That's actually part of our wellness program, and that came through collaborative. Basically, we're doing our mental health check-ins with. They're coming up, actually doing a couple presentations a year. And that, when I sat through that course, it was very good. Just kind of gave some highlights as to some things that could happen and where you start to feel compassion fatigue. I think that's important for our staff to analyze and look at, and being able to work together to see that maybe there is something going on with someone and we can catch it early before there is other problems. So that's a big part of our initiative, and we're definitely looking to continue that program on in the future. Short of that, that was everything that I saw that really stood out to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Andy? Steve?
No.
Randy? No questions. Deputy Chief Jonas, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning. And for many of you, this is a final day. This has been a long journey.
One thing I would like to point out is Deputy Chief Jonas has done a great job in this area. He continues to work with the union and work with the staff here at the department to bring this program forward, and he's done a great job. I can give you mine. It's a great collaborative effort, and he's done a great job with that. So,
well, thank you, and good morning to everyone here and everyone who's watching. A little background on Fit for Duty. This goes back even before I was in the position of Deputy Chief. This goes back 3 or 4 chiefs. And what has really happened over that time frame has been a change in culture here in the Marshfield Fire Department. And we're going to go over a little bit of that today. So everything that we do here at the department, whether it's Fit to Respond, really has to fall underneath our mission. So we check everything to our mission, make sure everything is falling underneath that umbrella. We're going to go over a lot of the whys behind this program and what we're going to come up with is an understanding on why it took so long to get where we got. There's a lot of regulation that we have to go through and make sure that we are being consistent with both federal, state, and local regulations. So I won't bore you with reading all of the regulations, but I will put them up there, and we will discuss how they really pertain to the fire department and the fitness program. So the overall goal here is really make sure our members are fit to respond. What does that mean? There are psychological and physical components to that. So as Chief was speaking to, we really do have a wellness program here, and we really have been working to ensure our members are fit to respond. The other thing that this program will do is foster reduction in related injuries, workman's comp claims, as we've had gone through quite a few of those in the past, and they are costly, having people off for extended period of times. Okay, balancing safety, legality, and accountability. This is where we get into a lot of the federal acts that we have to comply with when we're building a program like this, that is going to be hopefully approved and put into a policy for our members. Implications of the ADA, we really do have to make sure that this test assesses whether reasonable accommodations can be made if someone has disabilities or has diagnosed, like I said, disabilities that may cause them to not perform well. Just another federal code. I fall under this one. Protected age groups 40 and above. We have to ensure that the test is safe, compliant, and fair for all age groups, expanding anywhere from our newest person here, I believe, is 19 or 20 years old, all the way up to those of us in our 40s and 50s. Civil Rights Act. This is one I didn't actually know existed, the protecting our military members when they come back from deployment. We have to ensure that they have the proper amount of time to retrain, reintegrate before we can test them against anything that may bring their job or their duties into question. State and specific employment disability laws. This is a really big reason why HR has been involved in this process from the start. Get us through all of the federal stuff, the state stuff, to make sure this test is compliant with all of that. Okay, so OSHA and Wisconsin SPS, these are the regulations that we really have to work as an organization to ensure that we're meeting. Although public service in Wisconsin is not regulated by OSHA, we're regulated by Wisconsin SPS, which we'll get into, but Wisconsin SPS largely adopts verbatim OSHA. So OSHA updates have been pushed out, or I guess they're looking to update their code. They pushed out that new language in February of 24. They're still in the review process, but they are likely going to push through the new stuff, which updates the language for this specific program.
Chief, at that point, would you just stop for a second?
Yeah.
For those people that might be viewing this, could you please tell them what SPS is?
Sure. We're going to get to that with this one, just a couple here. It's basically, where was that guy? I'm sorry. Are you talking about what
The acronym, what that means.
the acronym?
It's, I can help out with that one. Department of Safety and Professional Services. So that basically kind of oversees how fire service is put together for the state of Wisconsin.
Okay. So SPS, OSHA, NFPA are our guiding documents. As you'll see in the paperwork that I handed out to you earlier, there's a lot of stuff that we have to make sure that we're complying with. Your guiding documents that I did hand out are basically references of everything that's in here. So we can ensure that this isn't just something that was made up by the fire department. 1582, 1583. NFPA 1582 guides our MD medical evaluations, which is a mandatory medical evaluation that we go through each year or biannually, depending on your age. Why is this important to fit to respond? Because this is what's used to ensure, to validate that a person within the Marshfield Fire and Rescue Department is able to perform or actually go through a fit to respond evaluation as defined in 1583. So we have to have that medical evaluation done first, as defined by 1582, before they can be okay to go through a fit to respond evaluation in NFPA 1583. We're also bound, we have to make sure that we're being consistent with the collective bargaining agreement. What that means for us is really just Article 3, Article 20. So Article 3 in the CBA deals with disciplinary process. So it pretty much mimics the city's progressive discipline. That'll come into play later on in this presentation. And Article 20 states that the department and the union will work together for anything safety related. Okay, current focus on wellness and fitness. So as I spoke to earlier, over the past 3 or 4 chiefs, our culture here at the fire department has changed. We now have integrated workout times in each day, which all 3 shifts take part in. We really try to give them that time from 10 to 11 or 10 to 11:30. But if they don't get that because of operational concerns for the day, they can then work out from 3:30 to 4:30. This is either done as a shift, like Blue Shift likes to work out as a shift. My shift, Green Shift, we work out individually, but everybody is getting a workout in. Many of us also work out twice a day. So after hours, after 4:30, after dinner, we're getting that second workout in. So many of us are actually hitting the gym 2 times in a 24-hour period. JPRs, or job performance requirements. This is largely what this evaluation is based on. And this is right out of NFPA 1001, which lists all job performance requirements for the fire service. 8 of the components for this evaluation are verbatim out of NFPA 1001. As you can see, we have mandatory evaluations, 1582 evaluations, and mandatory mental health evaluations. So we have made strides. So the Wisconsin Safety Professional Services, SPS 330.15, physical and medical capabilities. This is where these updates are going to take place. So sure, all employees are physically capable of performing emergency ground duties, which is very consistent with 1910, as you'll see in the next slide. It's exactly verbatim. So SPS has a history of simply adopting the exact language that OSHA puts out, which is why we're getting ahead of the curve here, and a lot of departments throughout the country, throughout the state, are instituting these fitness programs because of the OSHA standard updates. As I said earlier, NFPA 1001 dictates all the job performance requirements of a firefighter. These 8 are identified as associated with physical fitness, and this is what we chose to base our fitness exam on. Originally, we had based it on the CPAT, which is the physical fitness exam designed for all rookie firefighters to go through prior to employment. But after meeting with, I forget her name, Tracy, she advised us that that was not defensible. That was not a great thing to base this program on. And she advised we go back and look more at JPRs, which is exactly what we did. NFPA 1500, this is just the standard that NFPA 1582 and 1583 live in, and as you can see, it identifies those 3 topics. All right. Essential job tasks. This is what 1582 says, and you should have this on your paperwork ahead of you. This just lays out exactly what an MD or a doctor should be evaluating that a firefighter can be okay to do. That's the premise behind 1582. It's really for those MDs to state that a firefighter can perform those jobs or needs to be on limited access or limited duty. As I said earlier, most of the language that I utilized here is not my language. It's either quoted or directly out of our guiding documents. So 1583, now we're getting into the actual fitness component here. And it does have language in NFPA 1583 that all departments should have a fitness evaluation. So fit for duty, we chose to utilize a firefighter challenge style event. That does a couple things for us. It allows us to incorporate all 8 of those JPRs into an exam at the same time. It also allows us to break that up throughout our training. As you guys well know, we have a training program, training schedule that's put out monthly, which incorporates all JPRs. So not only will our employees be going through these physical attributes on a monthly basis, they will also be going through a firefighter challenge style event, which brings them all together and tests their ability to perform. The second thing this does is it just kind of brings this to a little bit of a competition for firefighters. We like to compete. We like to see how we do against one another. So it makes it fun, and it's a little easier to get the guys to do it. supposed to be a video showing you everything. So here, one of the JPRs is you have to be able to deploy a hose, take the hose into the building. This is pretty much how we are going to set up for a fire. We don't typically grab a charged hose out of the engine. We're taking it uncharged and going to the fire, then charging it up when we get to an ideal H situation. Pike pole, pulling ceiling down. This is a JPR. This is also part of the CPAT test. So this test, you'll see just one cycle that I'm gonna do of these. There's actually 9 motions in here. But what we're gonna be doing is doing this as many cycles as you can on a bottle, which mimics working at an actual fire. When you're working at a fire, you're gonna do a lot of these type of actions, but you're gonna be working for anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes at a time, which is about when your alarm goes off for low air. We don't stop there with this test because it's a psychological component to work past your bell, to not panic, and to understand exactly how much air you have after that bell goes off. So this test not only is testing physical abilities, it's also testing mental fortitude, and you'll see some fine motor skills here as well. Once you get exhausted, you still have to be able to perform fine motor skills such as turning your air on your mask or taking your regulator off. This is the search and rescue component of the JPRs. This test can also be performed in a gym setting with our 50 to 60 pound vests, but we'd like to try to make it as realistic as possible. Coming down the stairs, we'll be dragging the 180 or 165 pound mannequin. And then from here, you go straight into an equipment carry. The apartment pack, that's a piece of one of our heavier pieces of equipment that a firefighter needs to take either into a large facility such as PCA to find the ideal H component, or upstairs into a elevated building such as the hospital. After this, we go into the ladder component. So ladders are a large part of our annual training, both navigating ladders, working off of ladders, and also simply setting them up because they are heavy and they can be cumbersome to do. And with our numbers here at Marshfield Fire, we're often asking our members to set up a ladder by themselves. So it's important that they have the strength and the skill to do so. This is the final component, the fine motor. This gets more difficult as you go through this process. Your 3rd or 4th time through, your heart rate typically, we're getting up into that 160s, 170s for somebody. So making sound decisions and controlling your fine motor when your heart rate is that high is important to get used to doing. So getting used to that stress level, that's what that component's measuring. And then we just go right back into the cycle. Questions on anything with the video?
So it's a timed evaluation, right?
Pretty much, yeah. You have till your bottle runs out. And then what we're timing is how many cycles you get within that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, let's say you have someone in the department that can't perform this even remedial training.
So let's, can I back up a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
And define remedial training?
Yeah.
You bet. So we worked with Health in Motion, both Dr. Angie and Dr. Ben, to come up with a training program for that specific event. If someone cannot perform either one or multiple events, whether it's due to lack of physical fitness or simple injury. So they worked, and you should have that too. They came up with a program for each component of this on how to build their strength and endurance to get to that level. It's a 3-week program. Once they go through that 3-week program, after they failed the first time, they'll go back through and take this test again. It'll evaluate their performance. So what we're looking for is you have to make improvements. If they're still unable to perform but they made improvements, we're going to put them back into that program again for 3 more weeks. If they're still unable to perform after that, then they're going to go to they're going to be evaluated by a medical doctor. They're going to go back through a 1582 physical exam to see what's going on. Is there something that was missed on the first exam? They'll get their EKG, their blood work, all of that, to make sure that they're medically cleared to perform their job. So if they are medically cleared, they come back and they still can't perform, that's when we get a conversation with Human Resources and we start going down that road on how best to accommodate that employee.
So I understand we want to accommodate that, but if someone can't do their job, what happens?
If they can't do their job, like I said, just like if someone comes in for example, we've had a heart and lung, people go out on that, they medically retire.
Okay.
Yep, and that's something that Human Resources will be largely involved with.
So really, this is a little bit different from the police department, right?
Yeah.
I think, right? So is this evaluation, this testing, is that going to be negotiated, or is we just push it down as a requirement, right?
Currently, the way the practice is set up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we've worked with the union on this particular test, and they feel, and actually this is being driven by employees, they would like to see more accountability, making sure that our personnel are accountable to each other. And what's saying that is being physically fit is a big part of this job.
Right.
And if we can't be physically fit inside a building and they can't rely on that person, that's going to be a problem. So they want to make sure that this is here. And I think that's where Eric, our Deputy Chief Jonas, has done an excellent job of really bridging that gap and getting them to have that buy-in, so we have that time during the day where we are working on these things to make sure that we can do this and make sure that we're accountable to each other. So that's a big part of that project.
It's interesting, I'll compliment you on this culturally. I was involved, I think maybe Bill was involved in conversations too. And previous to that, there was no traction at all to make any accountability to have someone in this building be able to do the job.
And one thing that's really important to note too, under SPS rule, and that's what that is, the administrative rule is SPS. When it comes to the administrative rule, and I think it's under it's 101.14, I'm a deputy of the SPS, meaning they can take and remove me at any time if they feel I'm not doing my job correctly. So if I allow a firefighter to continue, like we find that there's a deficiency in that firefighter and they can't do the job, that comes back on me. And if something were ever to happen, they're gonna go back and look at all the ash reports, and that becomes, I would actually be held accountable for that situation. So from a line staff and from all of our officers here, we want to make sure that we don't have that accountability issue. We want to make sure we're accountable for everything that's happening. So we don't want someone in that position. If they can't do the job and they can't function within that job, that becomes a problem for everybody.
Yeah,
and so we want to make sure we're all taking care of that.
I think the commission's on the same page as everybody that's in the building to do the work.
Absolutely.
My question is, it's legally defensible, the test, right?
Yes.
It's proven, it's measurable.
Correct, because it does meet or exceed NFPA, it meets or exceeds OSHA, SPS, it's been run through HR.
And it reflects their daily work.
Correct, and it's proven to our mission and our values.
Yeah, I know it's taken some time for this,
Yeah.
but it was worth to see this as a finished product because really the requirements have changed, really, for you as a chief.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a
You
big.
just can't ignore it, right?
Correct. No, this is something we have to make sure that we know. And honestly, we want to make sure what's best for the firefighter too. And just take all the accountability off to the side. What's best for that firefighter at the end of the day? And that's where our wellness program comes in underneath the strategic plan that we put together, that we've all adopted together. That's a big piece of that wellness piece. And if a firefighter isn't doing well, we want to find every avenue to help them achieve what they want to do. They didn't get in this career, and this is my personal opinion, no one ever got in this career just to not just do the bare minimum. Everybody got in this career to help somebody. That's what their job is. And that's what we want to help them do. We want to help them connect back to the job. And some of it could even be mental. And that's why we've done the mental health checks too. There could be some things going on in the background. They might have seen too many calls, seen too many other things. And that's why it's really important to go back to human resources and really try to connect all those dots to make sure that it's not just a physical issue, that maybe there's something mentally going on. And if we clear all those and we know that we found that physical issue, then we need to go down a different road and we need to get them to either the disability or find accommodations within the city. And that's all things that I'm sure HR can speak to on that part, but that's what the accommodation piece is. It doesn't mean we accommodate them here at the Marshfield Fire Department. It means that if there's a spot within the city and it's available, that might be something they could do, or they might have to go down a different road. But if they can't function in this job, then we need to find something else for them.
I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you have any comments, Andy?
No, I mean, I like the presentation was good and the video and everything.
I do, and I want to kind of interface both departments because we're going through the same process with PD. On the first 5 to 10 slides, roughly, you had the military aspect of the return back to duty. Are we doing that within the police department? Because I can't remember.
Yeah, the state actually mandates it for anybody returning, especially if they've seen combat. We had a soldier return recently, actually, and they had to put in at least 24 hours of reacclimation training or reintegration training. So we set all of that up.
I think the slide said it was a certain amount of time, but I didn't see a designation of how much time that they have to reintegrate back into.
And thankfully, you know, the city, we have a great HR department, and we're gonna really refer to them and rely on their expertise in that scenario.
Do we have a designated time at a city level for them to reintegrate for both departments for the physical aspect of it?
So typically what we're doing is, you know, because things can change, so we're kind of staying on top of it as we have anybody going out on leave. So as they're preparing to come back, we're doing kind of everything, like all the homework beforehand to make sure that we're kind of following kind of laws and rules and all of that stuff. So I would definitely say, is there anything specifically formal? The formal piece of the policy is really around benefits and like basic stuff like that. It isn't necessarily in when they can come back, but we're going through all of that with, you know, all of the chiefs and the departments and making sure that we're doing everything that we should to make it a good transition.
Thank you. I just need to combine it so I have a clear view.
No, and going back to something that Commissioner Gershman had said earlier, really the most exciting part of all of this over the years has been the cultural change. And I think the biggest change that we've seen is just that accountability aspect. Our employees want to be accountable to each other. There's a definite brother and sisterhood here. They want to be accountable to each other, which translates to being accountable to citizens and the ability to meet our mission as an organization. So that's really the change that's going on here.
You know, I think from a community perspective, from a taxpayer perspective, this is huge. This is a complete sea change in terms of what we've had years ago, where maybe someone physically was limited to what they could perform. And you have such a shared responsibility when you're on a call, especially a fire call or EMS. I think it really gives me a lot of confidence that this department really is holding themselves accountable. And the culture has changed. A big part to you and the chief. So, you know, I think it's a great program.
And no matter your position in the department, except for Lori, you will be going through this standard. So from the chief, daytime people, everybody will be asked to perform this.
Oh, I think following the literature for many years, the change in attitude towards fitness has been dramatic. I can remember, you never heard about fitness. What it amounted to is, can you put a ladder up on the wall? Can you drag the hose up the steps? And that was about it. But today, the curve is almost going like this in terms of retention. And we're moving from that push-up, sit-up, run 2 mile standard to something that is truly job related, which is excellent. If you go and look at what other departments are doing, and Randy and I had looked at this about, 6, 7 years ago.
Did a lot of research.
We took a look at, I think it was 12 departments around the country. And some of the departments, you had to do push-ups, you had to do sit-ups, and you had to run around the track. That was it. And then there were others, primarily in the larger cities, that were much more extensive. And when you look at this, what you set up here, obviously based on National Fire Protection Association standards, parallels what FDNY does, parallels what LAFD does, parallels what Los Angeles County does. So in terms of backing it up, the big guys use it. And they wouldn't be using it if they didn't have it back up. I mean, their legal staff is far larger than Attorney Wolfgram sitting in his office. It's an excellent idea. It's an excellent concept. And it's an excellent thing to adapt or adopt. Liability today is a critical issue. Liability in terms of how fit people are, and liability in terms of training. Now, both departments, you run out of fingers and toes trying to count up how much training you do in the course of a month. We had a lot of people on training. So we're covering that aspect, and then we hit this in terms of liability. Can citizens come back on us and, geez, you just didn't have it to fight my fire. Because you didn't have that, my building got destroyed. The injury aspect is so important. I remember back 20 years ago when Chief Cleveland was here, there were a number of people that weeks and weeks and weeks, slips and falls with equipment on, and back injuries, leg injuries, they're out for weeks. And that's, like you said, the attitude has changed. You look at 20 years ago, we weren't doing this. 25 years ago, it wasn't being done. So this is a giant leap forward. The firefighters have to be commended for their interest in this. And of course, the work that you've done on this really is exemplary. As this goes on, as this program becomes more successful, I hope you're able to put something together and get it into a journal article someplace. I'm trying to think of the lieutenant from Madison Fire. Is that Aaron or Adam Zamzo, Chief?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, he's had some things published. He's really in the forerunner of a lot of this. So get your data, write it up. I want to see your name in print.
Yeah, largely the success behind this is just the buy-in from the organization as a whole, from top to bottom. Our newest track 2 coming in with our new academy, fitness is a component of that. Our new academy guys are working out. Our lieutenants, Lieutenant Griesbach, he works out 3 times in a 24-hour period. So it really is something that is modeled throughout the organization.
Sarah, do you have anything to add?
I think this has been really exciting to be a part of. It's really been, interesting to myself learn more about what goes on behind the scenes. I'm really proud of the work that, everyone on the team has done. And I'm really excited to kind of see things continue to grow and progress. So I just appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it. So thank you guys for allowing us to kind of take the time to do it right.
Well, we have considered We have consensus on this?
Absolutely.
We need a motion to approve Fitness for Duty program.
I'm very happy to make this motion. It's just, I think it's such a great step forward for the department and the community, so. Yeah.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Simultaneous seconds from Jen. A roll call on this, please.
Gershman,
Yes.
Schutz,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes.
Anchor.
Yes.
Thank you. Excellent.
Very nice presentation,
Yes.
one of the best I've seen.
Yeah, just really appreciate the thoroughness of everything. It's just, it's a new day. That's right.
Especially the video that made it make all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was fun to watch.
I'm glad it worked.
Trying to talk through that would be very difficult. Yeah, again, I would just say, that's a team effort, and Eric has led that, and I really appreciate all his work. Thank you for your approval on this too. We can now move forward and start making this a concrete part of our department.
That's great.
Okay, Chief, we have two more items on the agenda. You are one. We are now up to non-hydranted Mavis Card.
So can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
Did you cover number 6 and I overlooked it?
Thank you, sir. I'll talk to you later.
Yes, we did.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just got it off.
All right.
Thank you, very nice.
Just a couple little setups here.
Now, Sarah, make sure, the whole work that you've done for us, make sure they give you a t-shirt.
Oh, my God.
And thanks for all your hard work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, thanks for allowing me to be part of it all. It's exciting.
All right.
Hi, good to see you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, Eric. All right. I know this has been one that we've been dealing with in the community, and I appreciate the opportunity to present on this. I believe Commissioner Pinker was the one that requested this, and I think this is a very good and important one. One thing that we have to do is look at the water supply system in the city of Marshfield as we look forward. And we do have some buildings, some construction coming into the community, and those are things we really need to be on the forefront of. The fire department does play a big piece in development reviews. We look at new components, we look at new buildings, we look at new things and make sure that we can actually protect those when the time comes. That's why it's so important that we're a part of those talks and those discussions. As we look into some of the current challenges that we have, we've got development beyond existing hydrant coverage. So up in these areas, this happens to be the new addition. This would be over in the Yellowstone Park. This is gonna be the UW extension where we took that over. Again, they really haven't started to build this out, but they are saying that this is shovel ready. But as we build into this project, we're gonna have to make sure that we've got infrastructure put in. If we look to the north and to other areas, there are some other community developments that are out there that they are talking about. Nothing that's actually able to be talked about in front of camera, but those are some things that we need to identify ahead of time and make sure that we're looking at that, how we're gonna build that infrastructure out and how we can find the funding and the amount of money that needs to go to make sure that's being done. Fire flow requirements for new developments is, in the fire service, we do a lot of fire flow calculations. So we'll look at a building and we'll actually establish what 25% of the water flow should be. So if this building was completely on fire, we would look at 100%. We also look at 75%, 50%, and 25%. What we're trying to do is make sure that we have the water available in those areas to take care of that. And then alternative water supply options, and then long-term infrastructure decisions, and also future community growth. And I guess the big question here is how should Marshfield provide reliable fire protection as the community continues to grow? So I think that's a big subject that we need to look at. And we are poised for growth, and I think that it will be something we'll see in the future. If you look in your packet, I did give you a little bit of a presentation, just gives you a little bit more of an in-depth analysis. This is kind of a high level. But if we were to look at how water actually gets to a fire hydrant, it starts at the water source. In the city of Marshfield, we actually use wells. I think there's something like 22 wells that are out there. They're scattered all around the outside of the city, and then also a couple in the city as far as the well system that feeds that system. That water then goes to the water treatment facility, which is gonna be up on McMillan Street. Then it gets treated from there. Then it gets put into the hydrant system and gets put up into the towers. The towers play a very critical role on that because they actually put pressure back on the system. Pressure is what pushes that water through the pipe. And then they're gonna go again to the water main. So those two actually work interchangeably and then off to that fire hydrant system. Kind of an interstate component of that, your drinking water also comes off in that water hydrant system. So that's where you're getting that water, and it also goes out to the point where we can flush it. Some that you've seen in the community, we've actually started to kind of change some things up in the community. So as you start looking at hydrants within the community, you'll see that we're starting to get blue ones, green ones, and also orange ones. The one thing we don't have in this community is we don't have the red ones with the red caps. We don't have anything that's less than 500. We kind of call this an acronym in the fire service. It's called BGOR, which is blue, green, orange, red. It kind of helps us to remember what that order is. And when I look and I see a blue hydrant cap on there, it's going to be 1,500 gallons per minute plus. And we have a lot of blue hydrants here in the city of Marshfield. So I want to commend the utility department for what they're doing. And as they start to build out that infrastructure, they're putting the right infrastructure in place to make sure that we have the water available. You get to green, we're anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500. Orange is going to be 500 to 1,000 gallons. Where we've seen some orange is up by the clinic. We do have some areas up in that area that are in that spot. If you look on McMillan Street, you'll start to see some of the green ones down towards the kind of the closer to Fleet Farm in that area. Otherwise, the rest of the city is pretty much blue. We do have some other areas in the outlying spots. This one is actually determined for us. That's going to be black, and if we put that usually on our maps, we'll put it as black, meaning it's out of service. They can also put a little black label on the outside of those right underneath the cap, and it tells us it's out of service. That way we know not to tap into that one. For the city, when we look at the main barrel is going to be yellow. That usually means it's a municipal hydrant. If you start seeing a red hydrant, the main barrel is red, that means it's a private hydrant system. The difference between a municipal and a private, so a municipal system doesn't have any check valves on it. A private system will have check valves, and it's actually taken over by the business that owns that system. They'll do all the maintenance under NFPA 25, and they'll make sure they're doing that on an annual basis, so they're gonna take care of that. So you'll see some of those. This one, again, the caps are gonna be colored under NFPA 291. We'll also get those colored. We are working on that as part of a build out. And when they start getting their fire flow calculations and they give us that information, we'll have them start painting those out. Again, that's just a nice quick interaction for us to see, and it's a nice visual for us to see as we drive around the city. You can kind of see what your water flows are in those areas.
How many private systems do we have?
We have a count, I would say probably 20. I'm thinking 20 sits in my mind. If you go over to Felker Brothers, there's a system there because that one's set back further than 250 feet from the road. So that has one. Menards has some hydrants up there. Walmart has some. Marshfield Door has them. So any of the major complexes. Berg Implement. That one's an interesting one up at Berg Implement. That actually has big ponds and a fire pump that has to be turned on. So it's a little bit different situation up there, but that's again one of those areas that's out in the rural part of the department or the city to the north. There really is no hydrant system built into that area. So that's why they have private hydrants, and they had to build them at that time and put a pond system in to make sure that they could achieve that. Oops, keep hitting the wrong button here. What determines fire protection? Again, how much water is available. So that's where the wells are going to give us the water that goes into the system. What moves the water through the system is going to be the pressure. That all comes from those water towers that are going to push down that system. And then the last one, what limits how much water can be delivered, is going to be the size of the pipe. So the larger the pipe, the less friction loss. Just think every time water has to drag across something, it literally is going to slow that water down, and that's why we put bigger mains in for bigger areas. So if you were to look over at Forte, the door system, any of the major industries in the community, they have a much larger main. If you look down in the Central project or down Central Avenue, that's a very large main down there because we have a high flow or a high calculation for fire loss that could be. So we got to make sure that we're make up for that with water, and that's why we have large mains in those areas. If you were to kind of put a calculation of how much water needs to go to the community, these are rough estimates. But about 1,000 gallons a minute for a residential home. When you get into a commercial structure, you're going to be probably about 5,000 to 10,000 gallons, depending on the size of that structure, but usually around a little bit less. And then when you get into large commercial structures, a lot of those will actually have fire pumps in them. If you look at Forte, that actually has 2 fire pumps in that system, and that'll pump up more water and bring more water into the system so they can overtake that. What ends up happening with sprinkler systems, when you look at sprinklers, that sprinkler is gonna discharge water, and the more sprinklers that open up, the more water it takes, and it's gonna take pressure away from that system because there's more that's actually open. So it's flowing. So that's why we have a fire department connection on the side of a building. We tap into that, we put an engine next to it, hook that to a hydrant, and we pump water into that system up to 150 PSI. So it kind of helps us. Some of the codes when it comes to how hydrants should be spaced, if you look at the NR code, which is the DNR code, it actually talks about 600 feet in between each hydrant. So when they're building out new areas within the community, they're gonna put that 600-foot placement in between those. When you get into the private side of it, this is where you get into a private hydrant system. If it's a sprinkler building, they got a max distance of 600 feet. They got a little bit of a calculation, a little bit of an ad for that because it is a sprinkler building. And when it's non-sprinkler, then they have to be 400 feet in between those hydrants. So that's where some of that calculation comes in when we're actually looking at putting hydrants in those areas where we need a private hydrant system. Some of the water supply strategies. So when you look at hydrant operations, that's gonna be the best and most immediate water supply. It also allows us to put water into that area, making sure that we have a pre-plumbed system that's in place and it can take care of that piece. If you get into relay pumping, it takes additional apparatus, additional people are taken away from the actual firefighting evolution. And here on shift, we're working on getting to 12 firefighters per shift. But it takes away from the overall firefighting capability because now I'm taking a firefighter away from firefighting and putting them on an engine so they can relay pump water up to that area. The north end of the community, we have a situation going on there. I don't really want to call it any particular business, but we have a spot up there that's well over 2,500 feet. That's going to take at least 4 engines, or 3 engines, I'm sorry. We got to put an engine, and one of the hydrants that's actually off in that area is about 50 feet off the roadway. So now in the wintertime, add a bunch of snow on top of that. Now we got to go ahead and shovel over to that, try to get over to that spot. Our firefighters are digging through snow to get to that hydrant. Then we've got to go ahead and put engine in there that's going to pump from that point. And then they're going to pump up to the next engine, and we usually put about 1,000 feet. So we preload about 1,000 feet of LDH on every engine. And the reason we do that is so when we run out of the LDH, we know we need to put a pumper in between there to make sure that we can induce that pressure. If we don't do that, what ends up happening is the hose actually comes from the hydrant, and we end up cavitating that hose and collapsing it because it's just a soft jacket. It's not one where it has a hard suction. So that creates a problem, and that's why we have to put that relay pump so we can induce that pressure to get it up to the area we need to. So we do have a couple spots in the community that need that. And then you get into rural water supply and tender operations. Those are the other options that are available out there. In those cases, you can put multiple different avenues of doing that. There's a lot of different ways to achieve that. They can actually put in a, what is it, a well? It's not really, it's a big, large pump, like an irrigation pump they can put up. And that irrigation pump, they can fill tenders off from that and they can bring that into an area. That'd be a spot where they don't have ponds. If you get into a lot of the communities around us, they actually go out and design ponds and help them put ponds in. ISO has become a little bit more restrictive on how they're putting ponds in now. They have to go through a lot of calculations to make sure that that pond is going to come out. It has to have a 5-year drought system on it, at least 5 years, or is it 50 years? 50-year drought, so it has to be able to sustain a 50-year drought. There's not a lot of ponds out there. You got to put a lot of depth in it to try to get to that 50-year drought system before they'll actually count it as part of your ISO mapping. The other side of this is when it comes to the ISO, and I'll get into that in a second too, but ISO does say that you need 250 gallons per minute continuous. And with a tender, if you have a tender that breaks down or you don't have tenders available to us, we can't make that 250 gallon per minute. We lose points on the water supply system. So again, alternate water, you're gonna need more apparatus, more personnel. There's a lot longer setup time because now I've got to go ahead and drop all that hose to try to get water up to the area that I need to. Hopefully I can get a fast attack on that. We do carry 1,000 gallons on our first 2 engines. Engine 3 and engine 2 both have 1,000 gallons per minute on those. And we try to buy engines for the future with more water capacity versus ladder. So when you get into apparatus, if you put a ladder on top of it, it takes away from the amount of water that you can carry, because that weight has to be distributed one way or the other. It's either you make it up with more axles, which means more money. So what we've done is we've opted to go with more engines with a larger water capacity so that we can actually get out to an area. To give you an idea how long 1,000 gallons will last, if you put one 2.5-inch hose out, it's 250 gallons a minute. That gives you 4 minutes of water. So there's just not a lot of water.
That doesn't sound like much. Yeah.
So it sounds like 1,000 gallons will go a long ways, but it really doesn't when it comes to firefighting operations. It just doesn't go that far. Some of the different things that are out there, we've got auto aid. Auto aid is one where we can talk about, and I'll bring up the Mavis card here in a second. But auto aid is where we actually put together an agreement. Auto aid is usually done on the first alarm. And what that means is they're gonna come, when the alarm goes off, they respond with us. And if we go down that avenue, then you have to do another contract outside the Mavis contract. There is a Mavis contract that's out there that all the departments have signed, and basically it dictates how that Mavis system is gonna be put together, how the alarms come out, how you're going to respond. But in the Mavis system, or the mutual aid system, it's what the Mavis system, which is mutual aid box alarm system. The mutual aid system, basically they can take a pass. So if they call me and say, hey, I need a fire engine, and I don't have a fire engine available, I can take a pass on that one, and then they're gonna move on to the next spot on their card to try to get somebody there. And then regional Mavis, this is actually where you get into big strike groups. We have participated in that a couple times. We sent some down to the major floods that happened down in, that would have been around Toma, the Toma area, and down in those spots. We have participated in a couple of those, and they'll call for a strike group. They'll put together like 5 or 6 engines in the strike group, and we'll send it down as far as a team that's gonna be able to help that area. That kind of brings it in. But anyway, how this all comes together, 911 call comes in. If we have auto aid agreements, they would be the first one to be initiated. Then it goes to the mutual aid box alarm system. And then we'll get down to the overall Mavis response. If we get into a major incident, then we can call for that strike group if we need to. But that's kind of it in a nutshell, how that comes together. When you look at the card that we put together, I know I kind of handed this out probably about a week or 2 ago. I've actually gotten to the point now where everybody has been notified on this card. How this works when it comes to Mavis is I have to notify everybody and give them a 30-day window to deny or come back to me and say that there's some changes they'd like to see or they can't fulfill the request that we've asked for. So far, everybody's been very good to work with, and I've pretty much got everything to the point where we're ready to go. What we've done is we've strengthened that still alarm up on top. We've actually tied tenders to that immediately. The one thing I'm concerned about in those areas is if I don't have water rolling right away, we're gonna run out of water fairly quickly. If we look at that 250 gallons a minute, that goes fairly quick on 1,000 gallons. So what we wanna do is get tenders and get water rolling to that area so that we have that stuff available when we need it. The other thing is Spencer Fire Department does a really good job of taking care of hydrant systems, or not hydrant systems, but doing tenders and tender operations and how to get those put together. So we actually asked them to send us an engine and then also send their porta tank with their officer, and they're gonna help with that fill site and also the water supply on that piece of it. They're gonna take over that piece so we can actually put our minds to just the fire itself and starting to establish the scene. They'll take care of the setup and get us tenders. So we're gonna start to drill on that here fairly soon. And I think this is something in that area, especially in the Marathon area, there's not a lot of area, or there's no hydrants in that area. I think that's something we need to build on, and I think that's on the next slide here. Oh, I wanna cover this one too. To reply on our surrounding departments, if you look at some of the times here, the times are a little bit far out there. It's gonna take them some time. You gotta remember, most of them are volunteer departments. Actually, all of our others are volunteer departments, meaning that they're gonna have to go ahead and get the alarm. They have to get in their vehicle, they have to drive to the station, they have to man the vehicle, then they have to come and drive back here. So they might live right in Marshfield, but then they have to drive out to their station itself, and then they literally have to drive that back here. So we got some time and delay in that area alone. So that's why we really wanted to initiate having those resources come in a lot quicker because of this time right here, the time it's gonna take. Yeah, I think I covered everything there. The other thing is the roster. A lot of rosters are looking pretty good. Spencer's probably the healthiest roster that's out there right now. They're doing a really good job of recruiting. I had a chance to talk to Stratford the other day. They've got quite a few recruits on theirs as well, and they're doing a good job in their recruiting area. But some of the other departments are starting to have a difficult time, starting to see a little bit of a decline. And that's not something that's specific to our area. That's something in the overall volunteer process we're starting to see across the board in the United States. So it's something that might be a little bit of an issue to deal with in the future. For the ISO score, when we get into ISO, again, the fire department is 50%. We just went through our ISO audit. I'm hoping to have that information back. He didn't have anything ready for me this time. I was really hoping to put that presentation together too, and I'll put a presentation on that, how our department is doing and what the status of the department is. But they look at kind of how we respond, how many apparatus we have, how our maintenance, all the other parts that kind of go into that calculation. But a big part of that formula is the water system right here in the community. If we don't take care of that water system and make sure that we've got the water available, we're gonna have a bigger problem in the future. And again, this is a perfect time. We're poised for growth. I think this is the time to have those discussions, and that's something we're doing through the DRT process and then through the economic development process too, as we start getting the economic development director. If we get the economic development director on board, which they're working on right now, I think this is a very vital discussion to have with him or that person to make sure that they're able to understand what really needs to be built out in these areas as we do it. Because we are responsible for continued infrastructure, and just because we build out into an area, we need to make sure that infrastructure follows in just all capacities. This is kind of a telltale map. When you look at the map itself, this one does a little bit better job. But when you look up in these other areas, you can see where the hydrants are real strong. Red is going to be any of the private hydrant system. Blue is going to be the hydrant system itself, the municipal system. Down in this area, of course, the airport, there's not a lot of hydrants in there. We did improve one of the hydrants down there. When they built the rail hangar, we actually put one more down there that was part of the trade-off. We gave them a variance on that. That variance allowed them to move from a sprinkler system that had foam application to it back to just a regular sprinkler system that had a deluge system. It's going to be a flood system. But that being said, we had to be able to feed that system. So there's one hydrant that was put in for that, and then there's an additional hydrant just for fire flow and making sure that we can actually put a fire out. In some of these other areas, this is going to be more of where the wells are down there. You'll see Commerce Drive that kind of goes around this area, and there's that big field area. There's some spots in there, and that's where we were kind of concerned about earlier today when we talked about wildland fire and wildland interface. That would be one of the areas that we'd have a major concern with. In these areas out here too, we're starting to build out a little bit more. One that we had down in this area would have been right over in here, the I-State project. They took over this new area, a big chunk of that area, and there's no infrastructure there. So they had to build out a private infrastructure. And again, if there would have been a municipal system down Heritage Drive, that might have been something that we could have achieved, and it might have been a little bit more economically developed for them, where they could have put that system in. Up to the north, this is a neighborhood marathon in this area. That was brought in probably in the 80s. Actually, the marathon area is on this side over here. I believe 1982, somewhere in there. I don't have an exact date on that, but I think when we look back at the record, that was generally speaking, that was the time frame. And when you look up to the other side, I think that was about 2010, 2011, which would be this general area right in here. And we still haven't done in that area. So I think it shows that we've got some discussions to have to make sure that we can start to get some of these areas hydrogen and make sure that they're actually meeting up to this point where we can prepare for them. So, you know, again, as growth increases, water demand also increases. So we got to make sure we've got that covered. Fire protection infrastructure must keep pace. And, you know, that's one thing that just response times do. That's another piece of it. I know we've talked a lot about this, about the response times and making sure we have that 4-minute response time. But in addition to that, we need to make sure the other parts of the infrastructure keep up with it too, which is a big part of water supply. And then the community determines the desired level of protection. Right now we are at 3.2. Many businesses, if they're greater than 5,000 square feet, they actually have their own ISO rating. But for the most part, if you're a business within the community, you actually fall under the 3.2 score. if you're under 5,000 square feet. So the 3.2, they usually figure on the percentages. So if you go from a 3 to a 4 to a 5, 1 is the very best, 10 is the very worst. But if you go in between those, they figure it's about 10% with insurance companies. That's how much you pay in difference in the pay. So there's some cost to that. If you look at $1 million policy, you can see it can affect that tragically. And the last one, I think the big thing that we need to discuss is just expanding the municipal system. And there's some other concerns that we could have. I mean, this is something that really is on the powers that be, which would be the Common Council. If they choose that they want to go down this road and start economic development in that area, then I think we need to purchase tenders. This could be a combined effort, but if you're looking at a tender, they're right around 600,000 right now for a new tender.
Let me interrupt you at that point.
What's that?
Let me interrupt you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't you pop over to the 2 charts I've got?
Sure.
I sat down and took a look at the websites of 3 used equipment brokers. And I looked at the year of the apparatus, the make, how many miles were on the apparatus if it was available, how many gallons, and then some other features. So you can just point out some of those prices.
Yeah, here's a 2026 deliver on it, and they had to turn it back over to the manufacturer. That one's about 522,000. It's got 300 miles new. It's a Freightliner, 3,000 gallon, and 1,250 gallon per minute pump, which is usually not something you see on that. They are, with the new tenders, they have to be able to supply themselves. So now they are putting larger pumps on them, which again adds to the cost because now you have to put a pump or a puck on it. Here's a 2019 Freightliner, probably about 22.9 thousand miles, 2,000 gallon capacity to haul, $81,000. Then you can go all the way back, and I would never advocate for going to like a 1995, but they have a 1995 here, Spartan, 34.6 thousand, 3,500 gallons, and looks like about 100,000 for that rig. Typically, when you go to sell them, when they're to that point, they're usually past life expectancy. You'd want to find something a little bit newer than that, but that kind of gives you kind of a price range. That's probably one of the oldest ones up here, and one of the newest ones when you're looking at price. When we looked at a couple, just got some relatively high level costs on that. I think we were looking at about 600,000 with just some basic features, about 3,000 gallons, right? I think is what we were looking at.
3,000.
And they just kind of spitballed about right around 600,000. So usually the chassis are going to be the most expensive part with the frame. Right now the chassis and everything is going for about $450,000. So it's kind of crazy where prices have gone. When I first got into the industry, which is in, I guess, probably, well, when we first got here in 2004, at that time, you could buy a new engine for $450,000. Now that new engine is $1.1 million. So it just kind of tells you where the prices have gone. They've doubled. So it's tough, and it's.
You know, before you go home today, just take a look at those units. And that's just the basic price. As far as my column where I said other, if you look at the full specs, these companies spec out the engine manufacturer, the horsepower, the voltage systems, what kind of lights they've gone on, and so forth. And some of these are combined units, similar to what we have. They may call them pumper tankers.
Yeah. And I think that you can speak that Brian is also on the Hewitt Fire Department. They're, I think, in the process of looking at the tender right now.
Engine.
An engine, okay. But I think with tenders in the future, they literally have to build a pump for themselves, right? They have to have their own pump and their own fill capacity?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that also adds cost to it. So there's another cost that puts a new dynamic on it that never used to be there. It used to be just a tender. It literally was a truck with some baffles in it and it rolled down the road. At one point, they didn't even have baffles in them, and they found that wasn't really good when they went around corners. Water sloshes, and the next thing you know, they had a rollover. So that's where the baffle system comes in the tank to make sure that happens. But again, sometimes they're true and tried through, true history. So that's kind of how it happens.
May I interrupt just once again? You're talking about some of these areas where we may have to bring in water tenders. I took this revised chart, and that's what I've got over there, the first two. And I went down through the third box alarm. If we had to go down that far, we'd be bringing in R2 plus 3 more engines, with 5 engines. We'd have 2 ladder trucks. We'd have 10 water tenders shuttling back and forth. We'd have on scene 6 chiefs or 6 officers. And at one point, we get down far enough, the operations center comes in, and Lori winds up on scene.
Correct. Yep, she's actually there. She's actually our coordinator out on scene, and she's never had to do that yet, and she was a little nervous about that, but we've reassured her if ever comes to that, she will just be recording, and we won't make her do firefighting evolutions.
Give her a big whiteboard and markers.
Correct. Well, she gets to, she is the 6th bugle here, so make sure she's got that part covered. Yeah, I appreciate that. That really helps out with some of the information that we need for this particular presentation. Some things that we need to be concerned about if we continue to build out, and if they start going down a road where they say, well, you don't need to put in a hydrant system in this area. The concern there is once you do it for one, you're doing it for everybody. Yeah. And every one of them are gonna come to the table and gonna ask. So if we're gonna go down that road, then we really need to look at water tenders, because when I talked to ISO, they said you have to be able to provide 250 gallons per minute, continuous water supply when you get into a tender type system. We can do that very easily with a hydrant system. We can get more than 250 gallons a minute very easily. There's never an issue there if we've got a hydrant system in place. Where you get into tenders, if a tender gets out there and it breaks down, then I can't accomplish that. Now I've got to take care of that vehicle. If I've got an accident that happens, I've got multiple different vehicles that are out there on the road. I'm blocking off multiple areas where I have an isolated area where that hydrant runs. It basically is in that spot. All we got to do is tap the hydrant, and I've got 1 vehicle on a roadway instead of 15 vehicles on a roadway. So it really helps to kind of put that. But I think the big thing that we really need to determine here, and I know you got to take off here, but making sure that we are looking at that. If we are going to be going down to the point where the Common Council doesn't want to enforce that and make sure that people are building up to the development standards that are put in place, then we really need to look at those tenders, and we really need to look at 3 of them, because that's what it's going to take to deliver 250 gallons per minute. I asked if I just went into an automatic aid agreement, would they be able to honor that under the ISO agreement, and they said no.
Well, the other problem is where you store it.
Yeah,
we don't have room to store it.
Correct, and I think that was one discussion I had with the Common Council when it came to the Jeff Hill subdivision. They asked me directly, and I just told them directly, we're gonna need to purchase tenders, we're gonna need to put additional personnel to operate those tenders, and on top of that, I'm going to have to have a place to put it. So all in all, the tender's going for about 600,000. At that time, I thought 2 would probably do it. I said we got about 1.2 million in that case, and then I don't know how much an addition on the fire station is to cover 2 tenders, but I'm just gonna speculate that 5 million would be the starting gate. So you're probably about $8 million, or it could cost us 120,000 to put the infrastructure in. So
it's an easy math problem, right?
Yeah, and I think they were able to look at that fairly easily and just say, yeah, that's.
I apologize, I have to go.
No, we still have a quorum.
We don't even have to land on this footprint to build another structure, I don't think.
I don't believe so either, unless we were to look at it. Thank you, Randy.
And there's probably other apparatus or equipment that would have to potentially go in there as well.
Correct, I think we'd have to.
Employees and benefits.
Absolutely, yeah, I think we'd either have to look at, I guess I don't want to even bring that up. That we'd have to look at some land placement, or we'd have to look at new land.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at what I can see as far as the footprint. I don't think there's space here.
I don't believe so.
Create more problems getting in and out for the apparatus that you already have, I think.
Correct.
Visibility, et cetera.
I would see it as being a major problem. I think you could cover one of the ponds, but they talk about with that, you need to put a whole box system out there, and then you build on top of that. You have to have water detention. You have for every square foot of concrete you have to have so much detention runoff. So back there, those might not be options. I mean, it might be an option, but a very costly option to go that route. And then you have to have those staff too at the time. You got to be able to make sure those are going to be available. And then you're looking at a smaller percentage of the community has those, so then we have to look at districting for those areas to make sure that we've got those apparatus rolling when the time comes. So it creates a much more complex problem. Hydrants are the clear system that's gonna be probably the cheapest and most effective method to get water where it needs to. And it's always there, and again, it's a 40% of that ISO calculation, so.
Another question within your presentation is not completely specific to equipment, et cetera. On Yellowstone, I believe by the Ag Center, is that a commercial development, or is that a residential, or a combination, or a retail, or what?
The Yellowstone development, this is all gonna be industrial park.
Okay.
I think at one point, Marshfield Utility has spoken for some acreage there. They're looking to put a power plant, similar to the peaking station.
Okay.
They wanna put something in there. The rest of it is, I think they're already, well, I know they're out working to actively fill that area. So we've already got some plans in place,
So we're talking big buildings,
most likely.
and tenders aren't gonna suffice putting out a fire.
No, and that's where your fire flow calculations come in. Next year, we're gonna be taking on a different software, which is First Due. First Due is going to be able to help us enhance our pre-plans. Pre-plans really take in the fire flow calculations, so we can look at that. It accounts for all the hydrants that are in the area, systems in the building, and then it's gonna help us go and divide that 25, 50, 75, and 100% of that building, so that way we know if it's 100% on fire, here's what we need for water flow calculations.
You brought up early on in the presentation, the fire hydrant on Highway 13 North. That's about 50 feet off the roadway. I can only imagine the type of snowstorm that we had, the last big one of this last winter. Digging through that with the drifts, et cetera, 50 feet, and you don't even know exactly where the hydrant's at, because if there's a metal flag on it, you're not even gonna see it, it's buried.
Pretty much.
So what will it take? Obviously, the common council has to enact something to move that closer to the roadway, so you have better access.
Well, it is there's a roundabout up there.
Yeah, I know.
So with the roundabout, that's where that actually sits off from that roundabout.
Yeah,
That's where that's at.
okay.
To get it moved over, that's probably working with utility, but really what should happen is we should extend the fire main. And that's one of the questions right now that's out there. So the hydrant main that actually runs up there, we should be putting hydrants in. And unfortunately, this one kind of fell through one of the DRT evolutions where it didn't
Yeah, that's
get
what I
trapped.
was gonna ask.
It's a notable problem, something we're working on. But that one, there should have been a hydrant put there.
Yeah.
And when we get into new buildings, that's already in the municipal code as far as like how communities are developed. That's already there, and they have to come and ask to be taken out of that. They have to ask if they can put wells in versus putting in the hydrant main system. If you look at, what is it, the Greenbrier? The
what do they call it, Greenway.
Where the new houses are going in over by Hume Avenue, kind of where the Hume Water Tower is, back in that neighborhood that's off of Washington. That one is all hydrant system in there. If you look at that, they put in all the hydrants in, they knew that was part of it. And that's part of the economic development piece. I think that's where we started getting into tax increment districts and making sure that those are noted in there, because that infrastructure becomes part of that process.
So that cul-de-sac, I think, is Fry, and Fry used to be an intersection with 13, when it was just 2 lanes, not divided highway, just 2 lanes going north and south, 1 each way. So is that the pre-existing location of the hydrant, and that wasn't resolved when they punched in the highway?
Correct. Yep, they never extended that out. They took on that other area, they annexed in, and then all of that was farm field at that time.
Yeah.
So when you got farm field and interface, there really is no need to put that in at that time. But that probably should have been part of that project.
Yeah.
And maybe that's us being a little bit more at the table on some of these projects, saying, hey, what are we doing with extension of mains? What are we doing with those areas? That's what we're trying to cover down on right now.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Kind of bouncing off of some of the things Steve was talking about. First, if we had to go to water tenders, what's the possibility of sharing one, of getting the airport to come in to share, or the street department? I believe they've got a small tank truck right now
I believe so. Those discussions have never been there.
It's small. And perhaps they don't need 2,000, 3,000 gallons.
No, I think they're
But
like 500 gallons maybe.
Yeah, not very big.
But it seems to me those would be two potential sources of funding. Is to get something to share with the airport, something to share with streets department, possibly something to share with parks. Just something to keep in mind. But the other items, looking at the departments that we would be bringing in, Spencer has a traffic issue. Because they're up towards Willow, and which is on one side of the tracks, Highway 13's on the other. They would then have to go basically backwards to get to us. We're talking about the situation off of Highway 13. You'd have to block off 13.
Absolutely.
Possibly both directions. And the same thing for Marathon and Nelson Streets. You'd be blocking off Lincoln Avenue.
I believe so.
Because you'd be running hose from Lincoln and Ives, I think is the last hydrant.
I think actually the nearest hydrant for that is at the corner of Ives and Lincoln, and the next hydrant is actually on the Neva Jeans side of the boulevard, so we'd be crossing the whole boulevard.
Right, you'd be crossing Highway 13 again.
I'm sure that would create some problems for the police department, I would think.
Ideal.
But I believe then you get into reporting if you're over 30 minutes, 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Then you gotta report to the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So if we close a road down, I mean, it seems simple in principle, but if you get a large scale fire, you could be there for like 5 hours.
Yeah.
So now you're shutting down commerce within the community. It's something that we could have taken care of by putting in the hydrant system.
Right.
That has got that pre-pipe plumbed water that's always available, so.
Self-explanatory.
Yeah, there's a lot involved there.
Yeah.
Over on the chart, just look at how we have to respond and what routes they would have to travel. And you look at in the summer with construction. For instance, right now, if you, I don't know, what's the best way to go from Pittsfield to Marshfield now with the because the construction.
Get there.
You can't get there from here.
You can't.
You'd have to go south.
You'd have to go south.
South, then west, then north.
Up on X and then on.
Yeah.
Road and then up N to get here.
Yeah.
That was both on.
Well, this was not an actionable item. I do ask you folks just to take a look at the charts over there so you get a perspective. The last item on our agenda was the updates. I realize we're going long here. But just a couple items. Two of the firms that were involved in the class action lawsuit against the fire apparatus manufacturers. Rosenbauer has opened up a new plant in Minnesota, and E1 at a groundbreaking for the facility, so they're working at that. Just an interesting one for the Ohio State Troopers. What do you do when a semi-load of pickles spills on the highway? And in the other case, there's 40,000 pounds of Frank's Red Hot sauce that leaked out. We're talking about Mavis and automatic response. I put this in to show you what ultimate Mavis would look like. When FDNY responds, this was a case they had 3 buildings involved, all wood frame construction going back early 20th century. First alarm, they bring in 4 engine companies, 2 ladder companies, a fast truck, which is our RIT unit, which is usually another ladder truck, 2 battalion chiefs, a squad, a rescue company, and a recovery and care unit. They go to a second alarm. They got 4 more engine companies, 2 more ladder companies, 2 more battalion chiefs, a communications unit, a tactical support unit, a mask service unit, and another rehabilitation unit. So this is 2 alarms. They've got 8 engines, 4 ladders, a squad, a rescue company, a fast truck, their SCBA service unit, And at 2 alarms, what do we have?
For a second alarm on a structure fire?
Yeah.
Non-structured, second alarm, we'd have what,
Second alarm,
at least 4 engines,
yeah, you get 4 engines, you get, some rescues.
2 ladders,
Yep, the 2 ladders, depending where it's at, also.
I'm just checking the chart. First alarm, we have 2 engines and our truck. Moved down to the first box, put in another engine. Second box, we got 2 more engines and another ladder. But of course, you know, how many people do they have?
that's it. If it's coming with 1 person, usually we need personnel more than we do now, right? So,
And then I included an arrest record for the suspect that was fatally wounded in Madison. Covers a page and a half. It's not to form any opinion, but it's simply to indicate that particular gentleman's record. Got that from Dan Lemmington in Wisconsin. Long review. Of course, Madison, they deleted funds for body cams last year. They need them, they don't have them. And that's happened in a number of locales. You may have been following what's happening in England. Rupert Lowe, who's a member of parliament, put together a team and published a 215+ page report on the rape gangs operating in England. And then the last 2 items, you know, we've talked a lot about lithium-ion batteries. There are currently, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, 9 classifications of placards, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. People are now asking for a 10th placard specifically devoted to lithium ions.
it's needed.
Because when they're transported, some of those don't have to be placarded because of mixed loads. Last thing I included, this is a map from Reliant Energy of the proposed Hub City wind farm area. We've had a request already for the agenda item at a future meeting. This was communications and PR, and we've been asked to invite Tom Laux to enter into that discussion. Anybody else have an agenda item for future agendas?
Luke, do you want us to follow up with him, or are you taking care of that?
This was brought forward this morning, so that has been taken care of. So if you want to invite Tom to come to the next meeting, I can get a hold of him. You tell him that we're, looking for him to come. I'll get a hold of him, and in the next month or so, I'll get him some specifics.
Okay, you want the funds still?
And that would be communication issues for the police department, fire department.
As far as like how we
How can we improve communication with the public?
Yeah, I can follow up with him on that.
Okay. Anything else?
No, but it was a really good, productive meeting, I think. Meaningful meeting. So, not that the others aren't, but
Good presentation.
Thank you for all the work you did on it.
yeah.
That, having written reports for budgets and so forth, I know how much work goes into it. And
Yeah.
thank you very much.
And sorry for the monkey wrench of researching another
No,
drone, and
that was worth it.
that just added work, but I think that to be exercise due diligence.
yes, absolutely.
And then
Agreed.
so the community as a whole, I think we needed to do it.
I agree.
If there's nothing more, we are adjourned.
Thank you.